Persona 4 is a video game about a group of fashionable high school Japanese teens from a sleepy town that discover a terrifying demon realm accessible via department store televisions of all things. And I think it's obvious to say this has to be Jordan Peterson's favorite video game of all time, right? No question. Now I know you're probably gonna say that's dumb. Jordan Peterson doesn't play video games.
I'm not a foe of video games.
He's way too busy for that. And hey, I agree with you. All I'm trying to say is that if Jordan Peterson was willing, I think he'd really like Persona 4 for 3 simple reasons. I mean, this first one's almost a gimme. In case you're not aware, Persona 4's entire universe is built around a fascinating literalization of the works of psychoanalyst Carl Jung, who is of course one of Jordan Peterson's most important influences.
Jung was a very strange person and a visionary.
Both P4's story and gameplay revolve around our character's discovery of the TV world, which is a sort of parallel universe. It's kind of like Narnia, except that instead of reaching for it in the back of a wardrobe, you access it through a television screen. And instead of an idyllic garden wonderland that's inhabited by fawns, it's a nightmare hellscape populated by your worst fears and anxieties made flesh. Just like in Jung's theories, the inner antagonists inside the TV world are called shadows. And as it turns out, the only way to defeat these nasty boys, and please tell me if this rings any Peterson bells, is by literally arming yourself with various mythological figures and archetypes from the collective unconscious and fighting back.
You have to have those fights to put things in order, and if you don't, then you end up with a worse fight in the future.
Yeah, that's pretty much how it works. These mythological masks that you wear in the game are the personas of Persona 4 and are coined after Jung's psychological concept of the same name. According to the game, quote, personas are avatars projected from one's inner self that represent the facades worn by individuals to face life's hardships, which I think is just a fancy talk way of saying that this game lets you simulate the act of summoning bits of ancient mythological wisdom in order to defeat your opponents. And really, whether those opponents are Jungian shadow creatures from a demon realm or Kathy Newman or that one Esquire lady in a debate format, I ask you, what could be more fundamentally Petersonian than that strategy? Of course, in real life, Jordan Peterson does this kind of thing for YouTube views. In the game, you're doing it to literally save the soul of your buddy that's trapped in an alternate dimension. Which, conveniently, brings me to... Like many role-playing games, much of the action in Persona 4 is set around a series of dungeons you must crawl, which are all inside the TV world in this game. In proper Jungian fashion, and in stark contrast to earlier Persona games, each of these dungeons is thematically and stylistically built around the specific emotional baggage of an individual character that you were trying to save from an unidentified killer. Oh yeah, I forgot to mention, Persona 4 is a supernatural murder mystery story, by the way. It's pretty great. It's kind of like a spiritual successor to Buffy the Vampire Slayer, but obviously, with less onset ickiness. Each of P4's dungeons has the same basic structure. First, you climb to the top of the dungeon, and there you confront the Jungian shadow self of whatever kidnapped buddy is in question. Next, that malevolent shadow self will take this opportunity to spill whatever repressed emotional baggage is troubling that character deep down. Upon hearing that, your buddy will deny that repressed baggage faster than the Apostle Peter in a court of law made up entirely of anthropomorphic roosters. What's interesting here is not the fight, but what comes next. Because once you beat their dungeon, each of your now rescued friends can join you in your quest to help other people in their dungeons, but only after they reconfront their own shadow self, admit that what that shadow self says is true, or in other words, accept that that darkness they talk about is part of them and something that they must contend with going forward, and then use that truth to better their own life and outlook. Or, in Petersonian approved terms, they clean up their rooms. Or dungeons. I guess in this case it's cleaning up their dungeons. Peterson explains that concept this way.
I really do believe it. I truly believe this. And this is something I learned in part from Solzhenitsyn and in part from Jung, is that the way that you set the world straight is by constraining the malevolence in your own heart. And that's no joke, man. That's no easy thing. And that's a good voyage for people to go on if they want something difficult and worthwhile to do.
Like JP says, this concept of integrating the darkest impulses within you and using it to better your own life and outlook comes from Jung. Both Jung and Peterson call this process individuation. In Persona 4, this process is so explicit and so important to convey on screen that the moment a character cleans up their emotional room by accepting their shadow, that shadow self literally transforms from the monster boss that you just beat into that character's own unique persona. Or in other words, it transforms into the very thing that allows that character to battle inside the TV world and therefore save other people. Of course, saving people isn't all you get to do in the game, which brings me to my final point. The final rule in Jordan Peterson's best-selling self-help book, 12 Rules for Life, is as simple as it is cryptic. Pet a cat when you encounter one on the street. In this chapter of the book, Peterson tells a moving and personal story from his own life about what it was like dealing with the ongoing, terrifying health issues of his daughter, Michaela. To JP, petting a cat is a reminder that even in the darkest seasons of life, two of the most important coping mechanisms are, number one, shrinking your scale of time down to a manageable level, whether that's the next day, the next hour, or just the next minute. And then number two, taking the time to appreciate even the smallest and simplest increments of joy that happen to cross your path, even amongst all the unrelenting sadness all around you. And this brings up a really interesting point. Both time and appreciation of nuance, let's say, are not things that are normally felt in video games. But this is yet another way that Persona 4 is really special. Players of Persona 4 experience time because of its fictional calendar system. The entire game takes place over the course of a single year that's broken down into months and weeks and days and after-school periods that you don't get back, each of which you need to allocate to whatever you think is most important in order to literally make the most of every day that you have in the game. Players experience appreciation of nuance because of what the majority of those time increments make up, which surprisingly isn't dungeon crawling. It's the little stuff. After-school jobs, studying, fishing, making friends, helping people. I mean, sure, some of your time increments are about chasing a supernatural murder with a seemingly pathological hatred for the rest of existence, but in that exact same breath, the game is unapologetic about finding equal space for the joy of going on a school field trip with your classmates, of having a first crush, or just goofing off with your buds. Also, I think it is important to note that in that search for your most meaningful uses of time in the game, P4 does literally present you with a cat that you do in fact encounter on the street. And if you choose to pet it, I just want to let you know, it will increase your expression and understanding, so go for it. So it's Persona 4's complete mastery of these three things, of Jung, and of metaphorical room cleaning, and of boosting stats from petting cats that make me confident that Jordan Peterson would love this game in theory, if not in actual practice. And to be honest, that's where I thought I was going to end this video. Just a kooky theory. And then, just for shits and giggles, I thought, hey, why not type Jordan Peterson Persona 4 into Google, just in case someone had already beat me to the punch or something, right? So I did that, and the very first search result I found blew my mind. Holy shit, guys. Jordan Peterson agrees with me. In many ways, this raises more questions than it answers. Like, why the was Jordan Peterson perusing the Wikipedia page of Persona 4 back in 2017, for example? Does that mean someone in his life is introducing him to JRPGs? Is Dave Rubin secretly a huge fan of Xenoblade Chronicles? We may never know the answers to these questions, but one thing I do know with perfect confidence is that I would watch the hell out of Jordan Peterson playing Persona 4 live on Twitch. Wouldn't you?
Clean up your room.